I'm so happy to be able to speak with you today about a big issue concerning my field, which is education. Today begins a new chapter in my life, a life committed to learning and to music. I've had the great privilege of traveling all over our country and all over the world as an educator and as a musician. And yes, it's true, I am a drummer. But today, there's no hidden set of drums, I don't have any cool tattoos, and I did not hitchhike here from my apartment in New York City. I am fascinated by how music reflects a culture, especially in their style of drumming. Some cultures' music is deeply rooted in tradition. Others wouldn't dare repeat a beat, constantly striving for innovation. So if music reflects a culture, what would you think a culture reflects? I've had to learn so many things on my own that were not provided in school. As a teacher, I vowed to always give to my students what they needed from me, which often put me at odds against the institution. As a musician, perhaps the greatest drummer of all time, Mr. Buddy Rich, said, "You only get better by playing." Buddy never studied a day in his life. He focused on doing, experiencing, and creating. Just as music is one of the many reflections of a culture is a reflection of its own educational efforts. And I believe the single greatest issue we face in the world today is a fundamentally flawed system of education. Our culture's daily news feeds are filled with absolute madness. And I feel much of this is rooted in not what, but how we're educating ourselves. Now, I understand this is a bold claim coming from a simple music teacher and a drummer that doesn't even have tattoos. Education is a touchy subject because it shapes much of who and what we are. But I want to have a different conversation with you today about education, because I believe to innovate inside the classroom, we must realize how we learn outside of the classroom. TED is a generally accepted authority of thought and new ideas. And we've all seen tons of TED Talks, but have you actually gone to their website? On their education page, the very first line reads, "How do we change education?" Reimagining school. There's a growing consensus worldwide the systems are broken. I don't think the systems are broken. I think they're exhausted. And you don't need me or any other educator up here providing further defense of this truth, but I want to make sure that you're aware of the most common arguments. It's simply outdated, rooted in ideologies older than our country itself, and mandated by all 50 states in 1918. Exactly 100 years have gone by, the world has radically evolved, yet the process of education is largely unchanged. It's a one-size-fits-all model on a fixed time frame. We've all been the student who didn't quite understand and forced to move on. We've all been the student who knew all of it before the lecture began and were bored and disengaged. The obsession with assessments. We test, examine, and GPA our students to death and to new levels of stress and anxiety, often destroying their natural curiosity and creativity, and most importantly, their self-respect. And it's a big bureaucratic business. The United States alone is rapidly approaching an annual budget of $1 trillion, yet many of our schools lack basic facilities, basic technology, and our courageous teachers occupy most of the bottom of what we call middle class. We're still doing this not because it works, but because it's what we've always done. Our culture values tradition. But how do we want to approach education? As deeply rooted tradition? The problem is it belongs at the forefront of what we innovate. I have this thing I do with students when they have a problem. They'll come to me very, very flustered, and they'll say, "Mr. Eagle, I am very flustered about so-and-so or such and such." And I'll say, "Okay, let's stop, and let's all take a big, deep breath. Now, let's address the problem. I have 3 things for you today that I think you can incorporate into your daily life where you can help influence and innovate education. Number 1, accept your role as a teacher and a student. Now, we're all already really good at telling people what we know, but that's not teaching. Teaching is less about imparting knowledge and more about providing guidance and support. Your students in a given situation could be your kids, could be other young people, could be other adults, anyone. You are also a student of life, developing a love of learning. If you haven't learned to love learning, simply observe children. They want to know everything about everything, and they only ever stop being curious and creative because they're told to. Learn to love learning and share that love with everyone around you. Number 2, identify passion. If you're taking on the role as a teacher in a given situation, you must first identify the passion of your students. Start by asking, by listening, by observing. Let's take a very, very common passion by many young people, video games. Now, I'm not a gamer. I fell off that boat a long time ago, and I gave up trying to beat Mike Tyson. Couldn't do it. Guy's tough. What exactly do your students love about video games? Is it the awesome graphics, the imaginative characters? Is it the personal connection with players around the world? Is it the technical side, the electrical component? Help them find out why, and you're likely to discover that what's often viewed as a distraction is actually a gateway to their most amazing abilities. Learning begins with passion. Number 3, do stuff. Put passion to work with purpose by doing things. It is remarkable how much we learn through experience by fulfilling basic tasks around the house or in your community. Reorganizing the garage, finally build that fence in the backyard. Host an event, sell some of your stuff. Figure out how to repair that structure in your community that you've always wanted to see improved. As you do stuff, incorporate technology. Build a simple website showcasing your newfound knowledge and expertise. Share it with the world by embracing social media. Start a simple YouTube channel. By doing these things, maybe, just maybe, you'll figure out how to start that small business that you've always been excited about. Accept your role as a teacher and a student. Identify passion and do stuff. This is how we learn. And by living this simple process, you can influence and innovate education. Let me tell you a little bit about my process. I've spent my entire life in the educational system. I lived it as a committed student, then I became part of it as a committed teacher. No matter how effective I was, the interest of the institution always superseded my students and my colleagues. So I had to make a change. I started with my passion of music, entrepreneurship, bringing people together. I assembled a team who felt the same way, and we started doing stuff. We created our own purpose that serviced others, and that purpose is called Rhythm Monster. Rhythm, because there's rhythm in everything, and everything has rhythm. And Monster, because that's what us cool music guys call the best of us. And we believe you can be a monster too. We're kind of like the Khan Academy if they only taught drums. On the surface, we're an online music educational platform, but what we really do is provide access into these secret societies of music and culture. We work with public schools, universities, independent groups, and individuals on incorporating our monster online resources with their live students. What we demonstrate is a balance of technology and personal interaction, so the next discipline can follow, bringing us ever closer to the school of the future. We are in the current age of information. It's only a few decades old, and two movements have already started. The first is this conversation today, and that is the revolution in education. The second is its opposition, anti-intellectualism. Now, it seems that some of our students are subscribing to the latter and are often described as lazy and apathetic. And they are, and they will be, until we give them reason to be otherwise. Forcing tradition and ignoring innovation clearly doesn't work for them. But some kids aren't waiting on us. I've learned a lot of really cool production techniques from a 12-year-old on YouTube. How awesome is that? Imagine if everything and everyone in that 12-year-old's life supported his passion and guided his purpose, starting with that simple YouTube channel. Imagine what global issues he might solve if allowed to learn in a way that made sense to him. And finally, when it comes to innovation, the Buddy Rich of our lifetime is Mr. Steve Jobs. In his final public presentation, he said, "To change our culture, technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with the liberal arts that yields us the results that make our hearts sing." I believe your passion has been singing your entire life, and the traditions of education have taught you to keep it quiet. Join this revolution in education. Help change our news feeds by allowing every child to discover their passion and find their purpose. And never give up on another human being because of age or circumstance. There is no quick fix. But as long as you have a pulse, you have rhythm, which means you have the ability to influence. Be a living reflection of a new culture in education. Forever a teacher and always a student. Thank you.